Good evening, guys. Or good morning, good afternoon, from wherever you're seeing this video. Okay, I'll be touching a few things, which is basically one, liquidity, two, inducement. One, liquidity, then inducement. Okay, so now the question becomes, what is liquidity? What is inducement? And what's the difference between liquidity and inducement? So as simple as the trial might sound or foreign to some people, they are basic things, and I'll be bringing it down to you guys as to a layman's understanding as much as I can. Okay, so liquidity in a layman's view is basically where the money is. Is basically where just like liquidity from its name, the implication of its name, there is a lot of pool, money pool in that particular region. And you know that liquidity is what moves the market. Money moves the market. So for money to be distributed, money has to be gotten from somewhere. So that's where liquidity comes in. Let me just pick out something for clarity. So some call it point of interest. Different people call it different things, but that won't be my focus for the course of this evening. Yeah, my focus for the course of this evening. So my focus right now is just to make you understand that one, liquidity is basically where the money is. Liquidity is caused by a pool of buyers or a pool of sellers. Now, keeping their stop losses in a particular region. Now, there's a high tendency that if this stop loss gets taken out, a lot of money will flood into the market so that markets will have the momentum to move. That's basically what liquidity does. Like I said, money moves the market. When there is no money in the market, that's when you see choppy setups. But once there is large money dropped into the market, probably gotten from liquidity, probably gotten from smart money, the big monies, the banks, that's when you see large movement. That's why you see sponsored movement. That's why you see a move this large. Look at this environment now. Look at this bullish movement. You notice that money changed hands in this environment for it to happen. Let me give another example. Look at this region here. Look at this region here. You notice something. Immediately price came here, took out this region. What did price do? Price immediately with speed, it dumped. Why? There was a liquidity pool here where sellers have kept their stop loss prepared and are ready for market to drop. But guess what? Market rallied down, came back, took out the liquidity and dropped. Now, what is an inducement? Inducement is also a form of liquidity, but let me use labor for an example. Now, there is a natural labor when a woman gets pregnant and she gives birth. Now, that natural giving birth is what liquidity in this case. Now, induced labor is likened to an induced liquidity. So, a situation where instead of price going back to a regular liquidity, now the money in that region becomes so large and protected, so a new liquidity forms. That new liquidity that forms becomes what? An inducement. Let me see if I will find a very good example so that you guys will get me. Okay, fine. This is a nice one. Now, on a 15 minutes time frame here, look at this. Look at this point. Price broke structures on this point. Look at this little structure here. Price came out. Price took out this point. Let me mark it out for clarity. Price took out this point. Yeah. Now after price took out that point, normally we are expecting that price will dump back and give us an amazing, you know, entry. Let's go to a smaller time frame for clarity. Yeah. So after price dumps, we are expecting that from this point price will run back to this region to grab all this setup of liquidities formed here, you know, to grab it to this extent, then dumps. But guess what, at this point an inducement formed. Like I said, the sellers had a lot of pressure at this point that made price to what, to dump instead of going back to the initial liquidity. Now look at what happened. Because of this inducement, market came back to the inducement. Now the previous liquidity, which was this tip here, became a protected point. Now look at what happened. Price came back to this point, could not get back to take out this high here, which was the previous point of entry. Now because of this inducement that formed, that place became protected. Market just rallied, took out the much it could, but that initial point could not be taken out. Then guess what happened? Market did what? A rally down, and you know, market breathed and continued. What is the work of liquidity? What is the work of inducement? Very simple. They move the market. They signify entry points. They also signify exit points for trade entry setups. Some people call them points of interest. Point of interest in the sense that markets will always move towards liquidity. Now we have two different types of liquidity. We have the internal range liquidity and the external range liquidity. You know, I will explain that a whole lot more on a video of itself. So now, what does an internal range liquidity do? Basically, it draws price to itself because of money pool around the environment, and once it gets taken out, market pushes. External range liquidity, the same thing, but now internal range liquidity and external range liquidity forms in different market setups. And what gets you a trade. Let me give you an example with this my range I'm using already. Now look at this. After market broke this structure at this point, let me make this bigger for clarity, so you get to understand me easily. This is a 5 minutes time frame, so you get to see what I'm doing. Now after market broke out this point here, market dropped, market formed an inducement, which got us what, and look at this place, was first manipulation. So people that entered their trades at this point lost their money if they kept their stop loss at this point. This is also another type of liquidity. It's also a liquidity hunt at this point, but the bulk of liquidities was pushed to this environment because of this smaller break of structure in this zone. But while we are working on an entry model that focuses on smaller break of structures amongst a bigger break of structure, we'll explain what really happened there. But let's just call it liquidity for the sake of this class. Now because of that liquidity, price and this inducement, this liquidity became protected. Long story short, this place became a trap, and a lot of people fell for it. Price dumped down, took out the high, obviously, came back to this very sweet environment to activate what happened in this smaller structure, which I will explain later. Then price rallied down. Now internal range and external range liquidity. Now look at this. This point is an external range liquidity. Now, is an internal range liquidity basically because it is inside the structure. This region here is inside the structure. That's just basically what it is. While an external range liquidity, just like the name implies, is a liquidity that lies outside the structure. Just like in this case, look at this environment. There are block of liquidities here. Look at where price came down to. Price came down to take out what? This block of liquidities, basically an external range liquidities. So how does price move? Price moves from an internal range liquidity to an external range liquidity, and from an external range liquidity back to an internal range liquidity. So in as much as we are guided by price structures where we look out for our entries, our exits on trades, our ranges, our liquidity ranges, internal what and external. So in this case, if you had your entry at this point, this external range was a very good place to take out your trade. Now look at what happened. Price did very well here, although our real take profit point is here inside this break of structure, taking out this low, while the extended take profit point in this case was where the external range liquidity. So inducement, on the other hand, the work of an inducement is the same thing, is also liquidity. But now what causes an liquidity is basically like I explained with the pregnancy scenario. It is induced, it is man-made by what? Smart money, by what? Large money, by banks. They influence it to protect their own money in strategic points. They influence it to protect their capital in the market, to protect their positions in the market. So they induce these liquidities, and check wherever there is an inducement. Once market retraces, takes out the inducement and gets a good valid base, market does a quick rush in line. Why? Because that's a smart money signature where in that in that environment. So I'll be dropping a lot of examples of where liquidity is and what they look like as we go. But just know that whenever there is a break of structure, whenever there is a break of structure, whenever there is a break of structure like this, market will always come back to what? An inducement or what? Liquidity. Why? It needs that momentum to what? Push price higher than where it was in the previous price setup.